So today we will be focusing more on specification of goods, works, and services. And this course chapter or the course structure will be to understand the definition of specification. We will also be able to talk about the types of specification, stakeholders involved in developing of specification, and some of the risks that are involved in the development of a specification. So our theme this evening will basically be to understand more about specification. And when we talk about specification, what we need to understand is that at the end of the day, and that's why it is always important when you're coming up with a specification, it is always important to consider the objectives. What are your objectives at the end of the day? And this therefore takes us to the next stage, which is to understand some of the rights of procurement. And one of the rights of procurement is to procure the right quality of materials. And this, after procuring the right quality of materials, the next thing that you must be able to do is to ensure that you make the materials available at the right time. You also need to adequately satisfy the demand by ensuring that you have the right quantity. And those items must also be delivered at the right place. And finally, you also need to consider the price. Remember, everything that happens in an organization, what must be considered is the price of that thing. Basically, for you to get value for money, you must consider items that are affordable in the organization so that at the end of the day, you will be able to maximize on your profits. So we'll break the right down. The first one is the right time. Requirements are procured for use. If not received within the time required, then the purpose will not be served. So as much as you want to procure items, you must ensure that you are able to get the items whenever they are required for maybe production or consumption in various departments. The other thing is the right quantity. The requirements should be adequate to satisfy the need. So basically, when you are coming up with a specification, you must ensure that you're able to get the right quantity of the materials that you want so that you are able to satisfy the need, maybe the need of the customers or the need of the user department. It is also very important to ensure that you get the right place so that those items are delivered at the right location where the organization really wants the item to be delivered to. The other important aspect is the right price. There must be competitive. So when you are setting up your price, you must ensure that your prices are very competitive. Basically, at the end of the day, you must ensure you are able to achieve value for money. The other important aspect is the right quality. Remember, we talked about quality and we say that quality is fitness for purpose. So whenever you are coming up with a specification, the aspect of quality must always be considered. And quality is all about satisfying the user department. So basically, when you are coming up with a specification, ensure that anything that you are going to set in the specification must also capture the aspect of quality. And remember, quality is very relative. What is good for me is not always good for another person. But basically, you must set a standard that is going to be considered by every other person. Therefore, this takes us to now understanding what we call specification. So what is a specification? A specification by definition is the exact needs that need to be satisfied in our organization. Basically, the characteristics that are required in a particular good or service. So it is always important when you're coming up with a specification, you need to identify various characteristics that you need in a particular product. Let's say, for example, you wanted to buy a laptop. At the end of the day, you need to consider which kind of laptop are you going to buy. So what you need to do, therefore, is to come up with a specification where you set various parameters or characteristics that you need in a particular computer. Let's say your target is a HP laptop. So what you need to do basically is to formulate parameters that will incline towards the HP laptop. The other thing is that they must be written in a manner that enables both parties to understand and measure the degree of performance. So at the end of the day, you will be able to measure the degree of your performance or conformance. Is your specification able to conform to the requirements that are needed in your organization? So it is always important for you to ensure that all this is possible. So what is the purpose of specification? What is the purpose of specification? The first purpose of specification is to describe the quality and quantity of different materials required in a contract. So a specification is able to identify in detail what quality is required in a particular organization. It is also able to set some of the quantities that are needed in a particular organization. The other important aspect is that a specification is able to specify some of the methods of carrying out a particular job. So a good specification must be able to set some of the responsibilities or methods that we are going to use to carry out a particular job. It also shows or acts as a guide to the supervisor on how to inspect a particular work. So a good specification also sets basis on how you are going to inspect a particular work. It also helps to determine how much the contractor is to be paid based on the expectation and the materials required. So a good specification will be able to set some of the basis that you are going to use when you're paying your contractors or your suppliers. The other important aspect of a specification is that it allows the organization to be able to specify the equipment and the plans to be engaged for a work, thus enables the one to procure on their beforehand. So basically it gives us some of the requirements that are needed at the end of the day to procure an item or a tool that is going to be used in a particular plant. It also helps to verify and check the strengths of materials for our work. So basically you are able to understand and get the strength of the particular item that you want to procure. And the last one, it is able to minimize the risks and costs of all the requirements which are well specified. So when you set up your specification well, you'll be able to ensure that you minimize your risks. Remember, anything that happens in an organization is risky. So it is always therefore important for you to set a specification that will enable you be able to minimize some of the risks that might happen in an organization. A good specification should have the following characteristics. The first one is that a good specification must be clear, concise, and logically functional, and perform the terms unless a specified technical requirements are needed. So your specification must be very clear so that each and every person is able to understand it more easily. And it must be very concise, very short and brief, and also detailed. The other thing is that a good specification should have state what the items will be used for. So basically you must be able to understand what items are going to be procured, and at the end of the day, those items where they are going to be used in the organization. It also contains features that will not discriminate suppliers. So when you're setting up your specification, basically you need to understand that that specification is for all the suppliers. Therefore, at any given time, you are not supposed to discriminate suppliers based on maybe their tribe or based on where they come from or based on what they've given you in terms of kickback. So that specification must be very free, and it must allow any person that wants to bid be given a chance to do so. The other thing is that it is a form that is fundamental and forms the basis of a contract between the buyer and the seller. So a good specification basically must give that basis of entering into a contract between the buying organization and your suppliers or your sellers. The other thing is that it provides an opportunity to all potential suppliers to offer goods, works, or services which satisfies the user's need. So a good specification must be able to give an opportunity to any potential supplier who wants to bid for a particular tender. The other thing is that good specification should not be unrealistic. So you must ensure what you want to put in the specification is something that is realistic, something that really exists in organization. So don't put unrealistic characteristics on particular items. The other important aspect is that a good specification must contain enough information for offerers to decide on the cost of the goods or services that they will offer and what level of quality. So basically what this means is that a good specification must have detailed information. And that detailed information is what will ensure that we have a basis of ensuring that various offerers or offers can be brought to the organization. So after understanding that, therefore, the next thing that we are going to talk about today is the type of specifications. We have different types of specification, and one of the specification is called descriptive specification. Under this specification, basically what happens is that it describes the physical features of requirements, such as the descriptions that are included or some of the descriptions that need to be measured. Basically, it can give a description like the weight, maybe in kilograms, or the volumes, maybe in liters. So basically, it describes what exactly is needed in a particular item or in a particular product. Basically, what it does, it also gives the mental picture of what basically is needed in a particular item. It can also sometimes include the color of the items that you really want. The other type of specification is material specification. This specification tends to give the quality of ingredients in making the requirements. As the name suggests, material inputs. Inputs are the things that are needed to kickstart a particular operation. For example, a material, it can be labor, it can be machines. So these are the things that are really needed to ensure that the operation process is very successful. And the inputs can be divided into two. We have tensile strength and we have the composition. Under tensile strength, the tensile strength has the grade of how strong a requirement is and the level of such strength, which influences the durability. For example, in specifying a motor vehicle, you can decide to say that the size of the tire that you require must be of a particular size. Basically, it gives the outlook in terms of the grade that you require for that particular specification. And we've given that example of a tire. So you can be able to describe the type of tire you require in a particular item. Tensile strength can also be applied to paper products, including photocopying or notebook papers. So when you're giving up out a specification on a photocopying paper, there's a particular quality that you require in that photocopying paper. Remember, we have different qualities depending on the price that you want to attach in a particular product. So tensile ensures that you give the exact description of what you want in a particular item or the kind of feature that you really want in a particular item. The second one under that is the composition. Under composition, this can only be physically described, but also the composition of the product, for example, in furniture. So basically, it gives what a particular item entails. For example, when you're coming up with the furniture, it gives you the kind of furniture that is really needed. Some of the materials that are going to be used to ensure that the furniture is going to be a good furniture. maybe the type of the timber that you need, the type of paint that you need so that the furniture is in good condition at the end of the day. It also can be used in drugs or medical or veterinary kind of specification, where you specifically give the composition of the medicine that you really want to be given. The other type of specification is capacity. So you can base your specification on the capacity that you want in a particular item. Capacity basically is the requirement that should therefore be satisfied as expected in the categorization of performance. So capacity is all about what the item can do to you in terms of the load it carries, in terms of the weight it carries, and in terms of what you really need at the end of the day. So when you're coming up with a car, for example, you need to consider the capacity of that car. Remember, we have lorries that have different capacities. We have lorries that carry heavy loads, and we also have lorries that do not carry heavy load. The other important type of specification is specification by sample. And this is very common when you are dealing with things like materials, or when you're coming up with clothes. So basically you provide a sample of the type of cloth that you want, so that the end product that is going to be produced is going to comply with your sample. The other type of specification is specification by usage. And under the Kenyan law, it is always considered that goods must be in mercantile quality. So the goods that you are going to buy must be goods that are going to be consumable, or are sellable, or are in good conditions, and that they are able to be sold or consumed by human beings. For example, you can set up a standard when you are going to produce maybe a motor vehicle. You must ensure that that motor vehicle is very safe for humans, so that in the event somebody buys the motor vehicle, they will not have accidents at the end of the day. Maybe also when you're coming up with the, let's say in the hospital scenario, you can decide to procure or come up with a specification about beds. So maybe you can say, and you can be specific and say that you want a bed that is adjustable. For example, those beds that are used in hospitals. Remember, those beds in one way or another, they can be adjusted to fit various needs of various customers. Then the other one is design and drawing specification. Under this type of specification, it is normally common in architectural works or drawings. So this type of specification is normally used when you're coming up with buildings, when you're drawing up building, or when you're coming up with drawings on roads or water view. So this type of specification is very, very common. And what normally happens, the quantity surveyor sometimes might attach the bill of quantity, some of the quantities or some of the materials that they want to use when they are building or they are constructing their building, for example, or when they are constructing their roads. It also specifies the purpose or the memorial of the design. Under this, basically what normally happens, it gives a memory on what really is expected in terms of the design that you want. So it gives you the big picture of what you really want to do at the end of the day. Then we have the landscaping design. This is normally used for purposes of designing a desirable landscape or a given area or a compound. So when you're coming up with a design, maybe of a compound, you've constructed a house and you wanted that house to be landscaped. Basically, it is like you are flattening the land so that it can be accessible in one way or another. So landscaping design is also very common when you're using the designs or drawing specification. Then you can also use them in other designs. Let's say you're coming up with a logo of a company, or where you're designing a particular product, or you want to come up with a new product and you've been told to design that product. So it is always important to use this type of design specification. That is very, very important. Any question up to there? Any question? Any question? Jen? Jen?
No question.
Yes, Caleb.
I have a question here. When you are specifying
Yes.
for a particular good,
Yes.
you can use several types of specification, or just you measure to one type of specification.
Sometimes you can combine, depending on the nature of the goods that you want to specify. Remember, we have some items. Maybe you want to check on the performance of that item. And maybe you also need to check on other parameters when you are specifying. So you can also decide to combine 2 or 3 specifications. So there's no limit that this is a specific specification that you must use. Sometimes you can be forced to combine even 2 or 3 specifications. Yes. Catherine Masese?
I'm answered.
Oh,
No
it's okay.
question.
No question. Kelly?
No question for now.
No question. So let's proceed. The other thing I'm going to talk about today is the categories of specification. And the first category is standard specification. When we talk about standard, this is a standard that an organization must set. It is when you want to reduce on cost, basically, organization decide to come up with a particular standard that they are going to use so that when they are buying products that are uniform in the organization so that you reduce the varieties that are in a particular organization. So standardization is all about uniformity in a particular item. For example, you can walk into an organization today and you realize they are using one particular type of product. Let's say they are using a HP laptop, for example. So that is a specification that is a standard specification. And the essence of standard specification basically is to reduce on variety in an organization. It also sets to give what is called uniformity in the procurement procedures. The other type of specification is performance specification. And when you talk about performance specification basically sets on how a product is going to perform at the end of the day. It is not considerate on how you come up with the product, but basically how the product is going to perform. For example, you can decide to buy a particular pump, and this pump maybe has a particular capacity. Let's say it can pump 500 millimeters of water per day. So your main focus is on how the pump is going to perform, and it's going to bring benefit to your organization or benefit maybe to your company. The other type of category of specification is material or content or texture specification. In this type of specification category, it mainly focuses on a detailed write-up that contains the list of materials to be used in making a product, a service, or works. So basically, as the name suggests, material. So this type of specification basically focuses on the inputs that are going to be used to come up with a particular material, or some of the mixtures that will be used to come up with a particular material. For example, when you want to construct a bridge, sometimes you might require different materials that will enable you to construct your bridge. You can require material like sand, you can require material like cement, you can require water and all those. So all those are materials that are put together to ensure that you are able to come up with a particular product. The other type of specification or classification of specification is technical design and measurement specification. This basically gives a detailed document that gives information, both qualitative and quantitative characteristics that are needed to be satisfied in designing a process, service, or a product. So as the name suggests, technical or design, This basically allows you to be able to come up with various ways of producing a particular product or service. It also gives you the various dimensions that are needed, or what you need to maintain, or what you need to ensure, or some of the drawings that are really required to come up with that specification. Such specifications basically are very common when it comes to drawing architectural architecture works. It can also be common when you're coming up with bill of quantities in construction projects. It can either be designs or logos for a particular company, or design of a particular cloth that you want to release in the market. The other important category is result-oriented specification. Under this specification, the main focus is on the result that an item is going to give you. The objective basically is on the result. Having developed what is to be achieved by the specification, the same can be made then. So the main focus is the outcome of that specification, or the outcome of the item that you want to purchase at the end of the day. Then we also have conformance specification. Under conformance specification, the user of the product has details. The user of the product has details that are exactly what is required for the product, part, or material. Therefore, that product must consist some of those materials that you really need in that kind of specification. As the name suggests, to conform basically means that your specification must be in line with what you really want in a particular product. Then we have interface specification. When we talk about interface specification, this is a detailed document that contains information on the user's software interface. It contains details of action, visuals, and all the interface elements an end user may perform on an interface. So basically, this type of specification also gives you some kind of videos that you must watch and understand how a particular product is going to be used, so that you'll be able to know more about the usage of the product. Sometimes when you're going to buy a product, they normally give you even videos on how a product can perform, or how a product is going to be installed. So interface specification gives you some of those visual and how you are going to interact with a particular product. Then we also have test specification. These are details that specify the purpose of a particular test and highlights all the required inputs and that are expected and the results. And this is very common when you want to test a particular maybe drug or a particular item and how it performs in the market. Or when you're coming up with various chemicals, sometimes it is always a requirement for you to test those items to determine if the items really work or the items are going to fail at the end of the day. Then we also have quality specification. Quality specification basically sets the standards or the excellence that you require in a particular item. It can give a specification or a detailed information about some of the, for example, when you're buying a printer, some specifications set the quality of the printer that you want. It must give a better color. It must be a printer that is of high speed, or gives an image that is very, very sharp. So quality specification basically focuses more on the quality of the outcome, the quality of the end product that you are going to produce at the end of the day. The other thing that we must talk about today are the various stakeholders when you are developing a specification. The various stakeholders when you are developing a specification. But before we talk about some of those stakeholders, we need to understand who is a stakeholder. And a stakeholder is anybody or any individual who is affected by the organizational actions. They can either be internal or external. When we talk about internal stakeholders, these are the people who are within a particular organizations, and they are affected by various decisions of or policies or objectives of the organization. For example, the employees of a particular company or the directors. The directors and the employees are affected by the various decisions within an organization. The other type of stakeholder are external stakeholders. And external stakeholders in this case may include creditors, may include customers, may include suppliers, may include the government of the day. The other important stakeholder maybe is the public at large, because the public also have an interest in your company. So one of the stakeholders that is very critical in specification is the user of the product. And when we talk about the user, these are the user departments that use a particular item that is required in the organization. And therefore, they must be part of the specification making, because they are the people who really understand the needs or what they expect in a particular product. The other thing is the procurement unit. When we talk about the procurement unit, is the procurement department. And remember, the procurement department has procurement professionals. So they are the people who basically provide advice or the structure or the style or the contents that are needed in a particular specification. They are also involved in evaluation of specification as part of the acquisition process. So the procurement unit is very critical when it comes to specification development. Then we also have the management. And the management basically is the top management. These are the people who come up with various policies and guidelines that are going to assist you in your day-to-day operations of the organization. So these people basically give the procedures or the guidelines that need to be followed at the end of the day. The other important stakeholder is the research and development. Remember, research nowadays is a very common thing, because companies that want to be better and better in the way they operate have a research and development department. And their main focus is to collect information or to come up with various information from outside the organization or within the organization. And this information is going to assist on how best they are going to develop the specification. The other important aspect that is very common is the issue of, excuse me for a minute, kindly. Sorry for the interruption. There I was talking about research and development. So it is always important to ensure that the people in research and development gather relevant information that is going to assist you to develop your specification and make your specification better and better. The other important group is the finance department. So finance plays a critical role because they are the people who come up with various advice on budgets and how well you can pay or how well you are going to facilitate in terms of payment of the various stakeholders, maybe the suppliers and what have you. They also facilitate for payment of the committee that is going to come up with the various specification development. Any question up to there? Any question? Any question? Any question? Yes, Kelly. Kelly?
No question.
Derek, you have a question? Masese. Yes, Masese?
No question.
No question. So let's move to the next area or the next The other thing that we'll talk about today are the risks in specification development. We have various types of risks that are associated with the specification development. And one of the risks is the seller's risk, also referred to as type 1 error. In this type of risk is a risk that is normally referred to as the acceptable quality level. So when a supplier is supplying a particular item in your organization, let's say they are supplying some building materials, the supplier must be able to come up with a quality that is going to be acceptable in the organization. Failure for the supplier to deliver items that are going to be accepted in the organization might lead to rejection of those items. The other second category, excuse me for a minute. Aspect that we are talking about is the buyer's risk. It is also referred to as a type 2 error. In this type of error is where the organization might decide to reject items based on the quality of those items. Therefore, when you are supplying an item to an organization, it is always important for you to check the aspect of quality. Failure to do that, then it means at the end of the day, the organization or the buying organization is going to reject your quality. Therefore, normally referred to as rejectable quality levels. Then we have the third type of risk is acceptance and rejection plan. So it is always important when you are coming up with a specification, you need to ensure that you set aside a clause that is going to ensure that people who are going to bid or people who are going to bring items to your organization are going to ensure that they're able to bring items that are acceptable in the organization. Therefore, both parties must be able to know that indeed this is what the organization requires, and both partners must agree, both the buyer and the seller must agree on various aspects that will lead either to accept an item or to reject a particular item. So what we are going to do, guys, the time limit basically is going to end in the next few minutes. So we will have to end the meeting, then we will come again to continue. Hello?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So I will end the meeting, then we come back again.